Hi Chippers, it's Sean here. It's been a long time since the Penticton chip got together, the Complete Health Improvement Program. Of course, we had to cancel the chip program for the spring of 2020, and we've suspended all of the potlucks due to COVID for gosh knows how long, and we'll see when those happen again, if they ever happen again. So, Connie, Margie, and I thought that it might be fun to, in lieu of the potlucks, which are, of course, used to be every Monday, the last Monday of every month, we thought maybe we would do some cooking videos. And it's a good way to reconnect, to reaffirm why we choose to eat a whole food plant-based lifestyle / diet, and to just kind of get back on that bandwagon. It's 2021, it's a new year, maybe, and I know it's happened for us that over these last few months where we've been isolated and we haven't seen our family and friends and we've had to miss celebrations, that maybe we've all self-medicated a little with some food that's not optimal. There's the freshman 15 they talk about. Well, I think it's the COVID-19. So in that embrace, we're going to do some whole food plant-based cooking over the next couple of months, and hopefully that will re-inspire you to get back on the bandwagon if you did fall off, and if you're still going strong. It's just a great way to connect with the chip community, hopefully, and to say hi, because it's not only was it great food, it was great community. So anyway, without further ado, I'm going to do a chili recipe tonight. Now, I think I used to do that as well as a cooking demo when we were doing the chip program. It's just a really simple, easy one to start with. It's so familiar. Most people have made chili. I knew I grew up with it, but my mom put tons of ground beef in it, which we're not, of course, going to do that tonight. And so I'm just going to talk about some of the ingredients, why we eat these, some maybe different slight methods to make it more familiar, but so much more healthy. And then later on, we'll do another recipe. So I'm going to just talk about some of the ingredients. Obviously, I've got some beans, which we'll look at later. We're going to put in black beans, kidney beans, and we're also going to put lentils in. And of course, chili beans are the basis of chili. And so I'm a little out of practice, so I'm gonna read. So I'm gonna just tell you about beans. There's my bean thing. Good Lord. Bear with me. We know that legumes are the most important predictor of survival in older people. And there's an 8% reduction of risk in death for every 20 grams increase in legumes per day. And so, I know that before we became whole food plant-based, beans were not a central part of our diet. And so why is that? Well, there's three apparent factors: fear of flatulence, lack of familiarity, and lack of knowledge in how to prepare them. And so we'll talk about all three. The flatulence comes from the fact that most people eating a standard American diet do not have the adequate gut biome to digest the beans. And so at first it can feel like you're having a lot of gas because of all of the extra fiber, but that will pass, no pun intended, in about 3 weeks. So just keep at it, don't worry about it. So, and then we're not familiar with them. Like really basically I grew up at least with pork and beans and kidney beans and chili. And I think that was pretty much the only beans that we ate in my household growing up. And there are so many beans to experience. So it's just looking beyond what we grew up with and trying different things. It's amazing. And then lack of knowing how to prepare them. And there's so many ways to. You can buy them in cans, which is absolutely fine, or you can buy them in bags of dried beans and cook them yourself. And we can talk about that at some other time. But once you learn how, you see how simple it is, and then you can have them all the time, so much cheaper than buying it in cans and environmentally more friendly. So black beans in particular feed the gut biome. Beans have been shown to have, people who eat lots of beans have a slimmer waistline, lower blood sugars, lower cholesterol, lower triglycerides, better kidney function, lower blood pressure. So again, you want to eat all those great fibers to feed that gut biome. So we'll talk about some other things. We're going to do some onions, and onions are in the alum family, and they're much like cruciferous vegetables in the fact that they are helpful in reducing the risk of cancer. And they're apparently great for helping with depression, and they suppress the engine of aging, which is the enzyme TOR, and that enzyme regulates the growth of cells. We're also going to do red peppers, super antioxidant, right up there with beets and eggplants, just fantastic. We're going to add in some cilantro, tomatoes. Obviously, tomatoes are absolutely a great source of lycopene, and also have the potential of fighting depression, heart disease, cancer. They're a great antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, reduce asthma. And then spices. Dried spices are a great antioxidant because basically they're a plant. And then green herbs, also the same as well. So let's get started. We're going to cook some onions. Now, again, we try and cook oil-free for a number of reasons. For anyone who's dealing with weight loss, oil is 100% fat. It also impairs the ability for our endothelium to produce nitric oxide. It damages the inner lining of our arteries, which is the endothelium. So to cook onions without oil, you just add them to a pot. I like to heat that pot up, and I did have it heated up, and then I got sidetracked, so I turned it off. Anyway, so you just add them to a hot pot. And then I always like to have a kettle of water handy by, and I just add a tiny bit of water. Once these get cooking, and I'm sorry, this pot should have been hot, but it's not. Anyway, you just throw them in a pot. I do not use the non-stick pots because I do like it to stick a little, because that starts to caramelize the sugars in the onion, and then it makes it sweeter. It browns it. It makes it, you just keep cooking it until it's translucent. And all you have to do is just add in tiny bits of water at a time when you're doing that. We're also going to add some sweet potato. We're going to add corn, just frozen corn. And people often ask, well, should I be eating just organic vegetables? And I think that in a perfect world, if everybody could afford organic vegetables, that would be wonderful. But we can't sometimes. So it's really important to focus, I would say, the biggest bang for your buck. If you go online and you look for the clean 15 and the dirty dozen, there's a list that's put out every year that they study the residue from pesticides and herbicides that are left on vegetables and fruit. And every year, it's always the top. The top ones are usually strawberries, spinach, kale. Just go and have a look at the list, and that way you can decide what you really want to spend your money on. So I like to always buy organic spinach and kale. I rarely buy strawberries because it's hard to get strawberries that are organic and delicious unless it's strawberry season in your local area. So that's one really good way of determining what fruit and vegetables you want to choose. Now, I'm using frozen corn, and we talk about frozen, and frozen's just fine. And sometimes it can be more nutritious than fresh vegetables because they're flash frozen as soon as they're harvested. And we know that as vegetables and fruit travel to us, they lose nutrients with every day that passes from the time of harvest. So sometimes often frozen vegetables are more nutritious, and they're definitely more economical, and then you keep them in your freezer and you don't have to worry about waste and spoilage. So always remember that frozen vegetables are a great option. So you can hear now that the onions are starting to sizzle. And just when they start to stick to the pan, and this takes a little bit of practice, and you'll get it. And it sounds, I think we've just so been programmed that you need oil to cook with, and you really, really don't. I will immediately look at any recipe and it'll say, you know, half a cup of oil, and I just omit it. And I find the recipes are just as tasty and they work just as well in everything. You know, baking is a whole different thing because that's more chemistry. But in just cooking, you can just increase. If it asks for lime juice, increase the lime juice and take out the oil. You know, you just, or add even water. It's just so easy to omit the oil, and it's so much healthier. So while these are starting to cook, I'm just going to move back over here to the food processor. And what I do like to do is, while I add a bunch of beans, I take some black beans in particular, and I've thrown in some garlic cloves in here. Garlic, also a wonderful antioxidant, so good for you. And I just put these in the food processor for a bit because I want to just change the texture. So you've got a lot of, and I'm just taking the cilantro, and I'm just cutting off the leaves. I'm going to put those in there because, of course, you know, cilantro gives such a, some people hate cilantro and some people love it. I love it. And it's a nice green, and it's a classic Mexican spice. So we just throw that in the food processor, and we're going to whirl that up. And just by doing that, it changes the textures of some of the black beans, which I feel kind of just, I think a lot of thing about what I found when I started cooking this way is it's about textures. You want as many different textures as possible. So when we add this in, it kind of gives it the body, as opposed to just a bunch of crumbly beans. So we're going to add that in after the onions and everything are done. So you can hear them sizzling away. And you can see how they're starting to cook. It's going to be steamy in there, so it might be hard to see. But they're starting to get brown because they stick a bit. And if you listen, if I just put in like a tablespoon of water, it's a little extra sizzly. And then it deglazes the pan. And so you would just, you know, if you were caramelizing for a different recipe where the onions were really the star of the show, you would just keep doing this until you get that beautiful caramelized golden brown color that you want. But since it's chili, we're going to just move forward because we don't want this video to last for hours and hours. So I'm going to add in the sweet potatoes next. This is one giant sweet potato. And again, we are just trying to add as many different colors and as many different vegetables as we possibly can into this. Because the more we add, the more nutrition, and it's kind of eat the rainbow, right? It's the variety of foods that we eat. You know, there's so many people that will, you know, the celery juice diet is going around. It's like, just drink celery juice. Well, no, drink as many, have as many vegetables as you possibly can. We had people for dinner before COVID started. And before they arrived, I was geeking out and writing down how many different vegetables were in the salad, the appetizer, the main dish, the dessert. And I think it came out to something like, I don't know, 32 or something, which I just thought was astounding. So that's a lot of fiber. That's a lot of antioxidants. It's so many, just so, it's like, it's kind of like this little personal game or challenge that I play. And it's just getting as much nutrition packed into one meal as you possibly can. So we're gonna let that cook for a while. Obviously, we're gonna move this along a lot faster than you would in your own kitchen because, and what we'll do is we'll throw everything together and then we'll come back later when it's actually cooked and show you what it looks like. So that was just one pretty large sweet potato. And of course, this is all adaptable. If you happen to hate sweet potatoes, put something else in. If you like red peppers better than green, good. You know, it's completely flexible. I always think recipes are guides, and you make it your own by doing whatever you'd like. All right, so to get this going a little faster, I'm going to add tomatoes. Now I'm using canned tomatoes, so we're going to open those. You can get my can opener. You can look at that for a second. Now these are no-name, cheap tomatoes. Depends on what you want to buy. I'm hoping next year that we have enough tomatoes that I can can my own. I think that would be great. Then I'm completely in control, knowing exactly how they were grown and how they were processed. But I think it's also important that no matter what you do, whether you buy organic, not organic, no name brand, cheap, frozen, whatever, it's more important to eat fruit and vegetables than anything else. It doesn't matter, you know, there's so many people that have healed themselves by just really ordinary grocery store produce. It doesn't have to be fancy, it doesn't have to be expensive. It's just important to do it, because when you concentrate on eating these things and eliminate the things that are bad for you, the animal products, the oil, the processed sugar, all of those refined, high-fat, standard American type diet foods, you get healthier. So we're going to add these in. So that was 2 cans of the 28 fluid ounces. I always like to make a big batch. It's just as easy to make a big batch as it is a small batch, and that way I can freeze some of it. I'm going to just open the tomato paste and be right back. Okay. And the tomato paste, super concentrated form of tomatoes, obviously. Tons of antioxidants, lycopene, so good. And it's funny, before I was plant-based, I remember my mom would add this stuff to spaghetti sauces and so on and so forth. And you'd, you know, taste a little bit of it on the end of your finger, and I would think it just tasted horrible. Ah! And now I love it. I can eat it by the spoonful. And so anyone who has gotten off the wagon, wants back on the wagon, it's so important to know that your taste buds adapt. You know, I think over Christmas time, we all eat things that are, I mean, we are always plant-based. Sometimes we're not as healthy, say over Christmas, where we're adding in some vegan butters and maybe sugar and things like that. And then it's hard to get back because you've become adapted to those sugar, oil, salt. And they just taste so good because really we're programmed to seek those out in nature. But they were, you know, sugar was fruit, salt was the mineral in vegetables, and oils was nuts, seeds, and avocados, things like that. And so those were your sugar, oil, and salt. Now it's potato chips and cookies and donuts and all of those kind of things. And your brain, as actually a dopamine cascade, goes, oh my God, that's fantastic. We're getting all those really great nutrients, calories that we need. Eat more. And so, well, food has changed. Really, we haven't adapted that much. We are still that same species that should be seeking out fruit, nuts, and seeds and vegetables. So it takes a while to back yourself off of those really high oil, fat, sugar foods and start to taste these for what they are and how delicious they can be. So it takes a while. Don't worry, it'll happen. All right, so we've mixed in all of the tomatoes and the tomato paste. And you can just stay there, and I'll grab the red peppers. We're going to throw red peppers in. Again, another color, another antioxidant. It's like each one has their own special properties to make you that much healthier. And we'll just stir that in. And we're going to put the corn in. And that wasn't even thawed. That was just right out of the freezer. That in. So you can see that this is like really kind of bulked up a lot, and we haven't added beans yet. So let's add the beans now. So I have in here some red lentils that I kind of parboiled. I have kidney beans and black beans. And so we do cook our own beans. You can get bags of dried beans, very inexpensive. You soak them for 12 hours, you rinse off the water, you put fresh water on, you soak them for another 12 hours, and then you can cook them either on the stovetop, or we actually have an Instapot that we do ours in, and it's just wonderful. And then we do them in big batches, and then we freeze them. So we always have a good source of beans in the freezer that we can access. Now lentils are a different story. You do not have to soak those. You can cook those up really fast. And again, in our old life, we never ate lentils. And now I can't imagine life without them. I love lentils. We just love them. Can't have them enough. So we're going to stir all of that up. I think this was about 6 cups of kidney beans and about, I think, 4 cups of black beans. And then I'm just going to grab that cilantro mixture right there. And this is our black beans and the cilantro and the garlic. So this is going to kind of act as our binder to make it more like chili instead of just a pot of vegetables. And then the cilantro, I mean, I wish you could smell it, because just the garlic and the cilantro together is just intoxicating. All right, so later on I might rinse that food processor out with some water just to get every last bit of it, and then add that in here as well, because I probably will have to add some liquid. Although as the sweet potatoes and everything cooks, they will release moisture as well. You can see that it's starting to take form. But at this point, it's just a pot of vegetables. So now what we're going to do to make it chili per se is add some spices. So I'm going to add, and again, this is all your own preferential choices. I'm going to add chili peppers. I'm going to add a bit of salt. Just to say something about salt, we always talk about salt. We want to reduce it, but we want to make sure that it's ionized, because a lot of the Himalayan salts and a lot of the gourmet salts are not. And unless you're eating a lot of sea vegetables, you're not getting your iodine. And this is principally how everyone gets their iodine. So I really recommend that, and if you're choosing not to, then you need to take a little bit of iodine in a dropper. But so really important. Chili powder, cumin powder, some oregano, and a bit of liquid smoke. So let's gonna move over there. We're gonna put this in here. Now, generally speaking, I do not measure spices. I kind of throw them in until they look good. But I will today, for everyone's sake. All right. So again, such a personal preference. I'm gonna say we're gonna do, because it's a big pot, I'm gonna do a teaspoon of salt to start with. I am going to do a teaspoon of oregano. And I think too, it's important to know that once the chili is cooked, and you go in and you have a taste and you think, oh, it needs more of this or whatever, you can add it, right? And we're gonna add in a teaspoon of this. And I'm being gentle with these spices because that was chili flakes. And this is cumin. We're gonna add a nice heaping teaspoon of cumin. And then the chili powder, which is the namesake of the whole dish, we're gonna splash out and do a whole tablespoon of this. Okay. And so each one of these is such a great antioxidant unto itself because it's dried and concentrated form of a plant. And then liquid smoke, we're gonna just put a couple of dashes. That was 3 dashes. And that just gives it a really great flavor, beautiful aroma, maybe makes it more familiar than to the old chilies that we all grew up with meat in them. So I believe that we have everything in here that we want in here. So what we're going to do now is we will let this cook down. It'll probably simmer for a couple of hours, and when it's done, we'll come back and we'll show you what it looks like. And I wish I could let you taste it, but I can't. And so we'll see you when this is done.